Hello, and welcome to the 46th episode of Cora's Place. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me for today's conversation. In today's episode, I will be sharing an encouraging message for those of us who are Christians, and even those of us who don't necessarily call ourselves Christians. As always, if you like what you hear, please leave a review and/or comments, follow my podcast, and tell your friends. Also, please follow the podcast page I've made on Facebook. If you'd like to contact me via email instead of a Facebook message, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org. If you are new here, welcome! I'm your host, Cora, and I'm so excited to have you on this journey with me. Today, I want to share some encouragement for those of us who call ourselves Christians. However, even if you don't call yourself a Christian, I hope you can still find encouragement through this episode and really throughout the whole podcast. My goal with this podcast is to encourage others and to share a ray of hope in this dark world that we live in. I think that we can all use a little bit of hope in today's world. I hope this episode is an encouragement and a blessing to you. If you find this episode helpful, please share it with a friend who could use encouragement today. Also, I just want to remind you that I also need to hear some of these things in my own life as well. I am not always great at remembering these things sometimes. So I want this to be a reminder for myself, just as much as it is encouraging for you or a reminder. Now, with those things out of the way, let's dive in. Trials in this life, as hard as they can be sometimes, are very common and they will happen. They happen because of sin. We are guaranteed trouble because of sin. Nobody on this earth is ever exempt from sin. The only one who is exempt is Jesus. He was born sinless and lived a perfect life. Even though he was tempted by Satan, he still lived a perfect life. We need to remember that Jesus freely offers us grace, mercy, kindness, and compassion when we sin. God loves us enough that he chose to send his only son Jesus to die for us, even though he was perfect. His love for us never changes or fades, even when we make huge mistakes that others may consider unforgivable. I am so thankful for forgiveness in my life. It's totally okay to cry sometimes. Crying does not make you weak. Anyone who told you that crying makes you weak is wrong. Crying is a way to release emotions, and it can even be helpful to cry at times. It's better to release your emotions rather than holding them in. If you hold them in for too long, that can lead to a lot of emotional struggles. I have noticed in my own life that it tends to happen to me sometimes. Thankfully, it does not always happen very frequently for me. I think it seems to happen to me most when I feel overly stressed, scared or fearful, overwhelmed, or when situations pile up and then come crashing down all at once. We are not meant to live life alone. We need to be in community with others as much as possible. I know that it's not always a possible thing due to health or other things, but if we are not in community as much, that will cause us to have a lot of struggles. I want you all to know that you can face whatever you are struggling with at the moment. It might seem hard sometimes, but it is possible. You are not alone. God is with you and he wants to help you. If you need a listening ear, please reach out to someone right now. You can even feel free to reach out to me. I am not a licensed professional, but I would still be happy to listen and share advice with you if I can. I cannot promise that I will get it perfect or that I will know exactly what to say in your situation, but I don't want that to discourage you from reaching out. I also cannot promise that I will have any of the necessary knowledge to help, but I would be happy to try and point you to someone who can try to help better than I could. You have to reach out to someone. Do not walk alone in your trials. Isolation in trials will not help. It will only make things worse. Isolation in general can be hard, though, whether or not you are struggling. I have noticed the effects of isolation in my own life. Since I typically tend to be more extroverted in my own life, I struggle when I can't be in community with others for long periods of time. Please know that God loves you and wants the very best for you. He is not a God of confusion, heartbreak, or sadness. He is a God of love, kindness, and compassion. He cares about you so much. I know it may not always feel like it, though. Sometimes you may feel as if he is angry with you, but I want you to remember that he really does love you so much more than you could ever understand. The hard things that happen in our lives are not God punishing us. Our trials are meant to help us grow and become stronger. I know trials don't always feel good, but they can help us grow if we allow them. We need to have open communication with God through Bible reading and prayer. I know it's hard though when we don't always hear him. I struggle to hear him in my own life at times. This is definitely not something I have mastered or have gotten perfect yet in my own life, so please do not feel discouraged when it's not working for you. I think it takes a lot of practice to get it right, just as it would with other things. You don't usually get things right on the first try. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort. If you keep persevering, you will get better at some point, though. There have been many things in my life that I have had to practice at, some of which I maybe still don't even get perfect. The only time we will ever be completely whole and perfect is in heaven if we have placed our trust in Jesus. When you face trials in your life, what do you tend to do? In my own life at this point, as of the recording of this episode, I tend to struggle a lot with trusting God. I sometimes even feel frustrated with or angry at God. I need to work on trusting God more and not leaning on feelings. My grandma, who is one of the wisest people I know, once told me something that I honestly need to remind myself of often. She said, "Living by feelings never works out well." To me, I think this means that if we live by feelings rather than facts, we will always struggle. We need to remember truths like, this situation is temporary, God is with us always, God loves us, and God does not want to harm us. Satan means evil against us, but God takes that and turns it into something to be used for our good. Genesis 50, verse 20. Satan only wants to harm us. Satan is a liar, and we need to fight against him. We need to look to Jesus for truth and encouragement. I know that it can sometimes feel like trials in our lives will last forever, but God can and will help you through them if you let him. It's okay to need to ask for help sometimes. Don't think that asking for help is silly or makes you look like a baby. It really doesn't. It's totally normal. Everyone needs help sometimes. I understand that it might be scary to ask for help, but I think that asking for help is better than trying to go through the trials of life on your own. We were created to be in community with others. We need community. Community is so beneficial for us as Christians. I know that in my own life, it really does help. I have noticed that when I'm not in much community for long periods, I tend to struggle a lot more. When I'm in community more, I usually do a lot better and don't have as many struggles. Another thing that sometimes helps my mental health is going out for a walk. Maybe not every time, but at least sometimes. Don't just give up when you're struggling. You need to keep trying. I think that there are so many things left for you to do in life. I bet that there are so many people who would really miss you if you were gone. Choose to be brave and reach out to a professional if you need help. Do not delay getting professional help just because you think you can do it on your own. The truth is that you can't do everything on your own. You have to ask for help sometimes. I know it might seem embarrassing or scary sometimes, but reaching out for help is wise and essential sometimes. You have to persevere. God doesn't allow you to go through hard things in your life without promising to walk beside you through them. He wants to walk with you through your trials, and he will if you let him. By not getting help, that could maybe cause more struggles. I want you to know that God loves you, wants you, needs you, and he is always with you. Even if you don't feel him, he is near you. The Bible even talks about the idea of God being with us always in Psalm 46, verse 1. I definitely recommend reading that chapter. It's a good chapter, and I enjoy it. What we go through is hard, but God promises to be with us. He is right there with you, ready and waiting for you to call on him. I know it may be hard to do that, at least at first, but it just might help, so please give it a try. I think one of the most important things to remember in times of struggle is that it will eventually pass. Maybe not as soon as you would like, or with the end result you wanted, but whatever trial you are facing will eventually pass. It may not always feel like it sometimes, though. So when you feel discouraged, please try to remember that it will eventually, and remember to reach out to someone if you need help. Take a step of faith and reach out to someone. I'm sure you can find someone who would love to talk to you and be there to support you. Having someone to support you in struggles is so important. Faith over fear is hard sometimes, but it can have a lot of great benefits too. I have seen that in my own life. If you want to hear more about it, you can go back and listen to episode 9 of the podcast, where I share about choosing faith over fear and a couple of personal stories from my life. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please follow, leave a comment, and a review of my podcast if you haven't already, and please follow my podcast page on Facebook so you never miss an update. If you have any verses you'd like me to read on a future episode, or if you have any topics you'd like me to talk about, you can email me at corachin@mailbox.org, or you can send me a message on my podcast page on Facebook through the link in the show notes, and I will get back to you when I can. Hope you tune in next week for the 47th episode.